Hey YouTube, welcome. I wanted to test sound. Hopefully I got sound this time. I wanted to check sound before I get the other crew on Instagram, and it looks like we're good. Okay, so let's bring Instagram on. Hey, clutter-free family. Welcome to the Clarity Hotline, where you get cues to your A's, your real life A's. Let me pull all my show notes here. Yeah, I mean, I guess this is a show, you know. So I do have notes. Ooh. Yeah. Because obviously I have to read the questions to you guys. Okay. So, welcome. Thanks for being here, where we talk mindset, business, meaningful productivity, and all the above. So really no question is off limits, really, technically. Because you know we're talking about 360-degree clarity here. So you'll notice the questions run the gamut, and that's why I like it. Okay, so the questions today are. Okay, so this question, Kendra, what is the right social media platform for my business? And then I have 3 other questions, but I don't know that we'll get to them all, because what I do also want to address is a question that Shetty asked on YouTube about ADHD. How do I know if I have ADHD or if I'm just distracted? And so let's get into that, okay? Anyway, so let's take a big breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, in and out, in and out. And what we're doing really is clearing out the clutter that's kind of just is blocking us, and using the breath to get present, because it can feel so often that, you know, we're stuck in our heads, right? So much going on. There's so much stimulation, so much external stimuli coming at us on a daily basis that it can feel overwhelming. And so we can feel stuck in all of it. Like, whoa, how do I balance all that and, you know, apply it or, you know, or not to my life. So all that is the breath is really kind of opening up those airwaves, those wavelengths, those thought forms, and just kind of, you know, airing out some of that, because we have to make room for clarity, right? What we allow in space for, then can come in. What we allow room for, which is why, you know, we can feel cluttered in our homes, because we're not removing things as fast as we're acquiring things. And that can feel very stifling. And it's representative of what's going on in here, first and foremost. So anywho, keep breathing till you feel present, till you feel clear, whether you're watching the replay or here with me live. Thanks for being on, by the way, live. And shall we get right into it? So I'll start with Kendra's question. Her question is actually a coaching question. She asked me, and I'm going to cut off some of the question, because and she won't mind, because she got the full scope of my answer, but I want to hone in on this one right here, this part, because I think it's applicable to everybody. What's the right social media platform for my business? And it depends on the speed at which you want to go. So immediately, you know, I want to know, like, what's your vibe? What is your lifestyle allow for right now when it comes to, you know, fitting social media into your content marketing plan? And because ultimately social media, when you're in business, is just your marketing. It's a marketing outlet. It's a free, organic way to grow your audience on this topic, on this niche topic, right? Because they're coming to you and they feel as though they can come to your channel, come to your page and say, oh yeah, oh, I need this, right? Immediately they know, okay, this person's going to speak to this aspect of my life, and I feel the need to want to learn about this aspect of my life. And so there are different places where different topics do better than others. And also it's because of a vibe the platform itself already has. And I'll bring up something that I kind of noticed recently is I feel like I'm on YouTube right now, Instagram, I'm on YouTube. We're live streaming simultaneously. And I really find that I'm liking the energy over at YouTube. But I recognize the masculinity in it. It's very male dominant. It's a little bit, what do they call it? Hustle bro culture. And there is that, right? And so I recognize going against the grain a little bit because my dominant vibration is my feminine. But I can play right in the masculinity ring and be competitive right in that way in my business, because you do ultimately want to be able to touch both, right? The feminine and the masculine. That's how your business grows, because it's kind of like the dreamers and the doers. You need both, right? Well, in business, if you've got the visionary and the integrator, if you read that book, it escapes me what book that is. Rocket Fuel. You need a visionary, so somebody who kind of has the big picture thinking, and then you've got the integrator, somebody who's maybe a little less the face of the brand and more kind of the COO. They're handling the back end, they're pitching deals, making plans, rubbing elbows, taking lunch, and meeting with the people that maybe are going to help investors. You know what I mean? They would kind of be the ones to handle those finer details. And the visionary is, the creative one. And so you kind of you have to know which one you are and be honest about that. So that way, when it comes time to hire an integrator or partner, I should say, with an integrator, usually you'll be partnered, because an integrator is an equal part of a business. The better, right? When you find that integrator piece, you'll see those businesses just fly past, a solopreneur or a single CEO, right, with no real team or board of directors. Even a board of directors, can be a bottleneck if you don't have somebody to help execute on the big ideas, right? Anyway, whoa, that's way, 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 way more advanced than this question needed to be, because it's really about starting. It's going along with starting your business. And a lot of times we're starting our business using an organic platform like social media, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn is coming hard on the stage of social media, the game there. YouTube now even has a community tab where it feels more like Instagram, right? You can just send out updates. And so it's kind of tailored. YouTube is kind of giving its creators all the best of all the worlds they want to be in, shorts, to compete with TikTok and Reels. And then it's like all of them are doing that. All of them want some aspect of the pie, some piece of the pie, when it comes to giving creators what they want to bring their vision to life. X, Twitter, that is, I think, just a quick rapid fire. Like, I've got ideas for days. I can talk to people. I love connecting. I love concepting and debating and just really challenging, refining my thought process on things. That's why it's very headline driven. You'll see a lot of thought leaders on X, Twitter. You'll see a lot of, media outlets and authors, right? Big thinkers. And so, I like the idea of X. I just can never get into it. I don't know. I like it though. I like the idea of it. So if anything, I found kind of my groove on YouTube, and just him really enjoying it there. here. And I think in order to find your preferred platform, you really do have to just kind of take a look, right? So if you've got some R&D time, spend time scrolling on each of the apps. And I think if intuitively, I feel like intuitively, I feel like anybody asking that question knows. For instance, like if you are a visual driven business like paint and you make your own paint or your own home decor, then Pinterest is a really great spot for you, right? But so is Instagram. And it's Instagram even better than Pinterest. If you think about, I mean, Pinterest drives traffic though, so can't fault that. But is Instagram, which gives you a little bit more play, right? You get to play your hand at different ways of reaching somebody looking for this particular look of home decor or this, these fun color, non-toxic paints. So all that to say, it's like, well, if I've got Pinterest, but on Instagram, I'm still visual. I got the idea of, I got Reels as an option. I can go live and show my process. I can, use stories and update people. So the breadth of offering, I think, matters when it comes to the right social media platform for you. But ultimately, it's going to be the speed at which you want to move, because it's going to always come into question. You're always going to come across your feed, people marketing to you, B2B, B2C, and they're going to be luring you into their products to serve your end goal, which is to grow your business via this platform, right? And so you're stepping into the ring with some heavy hitters when it comes to, persuasion and things like that. So just be aware when you choose a platform and you get on the platform, then you are essentially going to be open to growing it and listening to the people who are said gurus about growing this platform. And is that where you want to grow? And if you went viral there, do you want to continue to have conversations there because you just built this massive following? People, you got some good wins, big wins, and maybe not quick wins, but wins along the way, right? Nonetheless. And so you're feeling like, okay, I'm going to be here a while. And I would say, honestly, you want to plan to be there a while, 18 months minimum, right? And so my question for Kendra, and now for everyone listening, is, did I even write it down? I guess I didn't. But okay, yeah. Okay, so which social media platform do you want to be part of, and you see yourself sticking it out for 18 months at least, doing what you believe to be the bare minimum to keep the eyes coming? So you found your pace on a platform, right? And you're still getting hit by all the marketers or all the tools, or even the tool itself, the app itself. Hey, new feature, try this new feature, and just hitting you with all these features. And that you want to be competitive in the algorithm. So you're trying them all. A little bit distraction, right? That's definitely a shiny object syndrome, are the features of an app. And you just want to be able to be comfortable with the bare minimum of what you believe, because this is all a question of your own motivation to continue to do the bare minimum. So what you believe is the bare minimum to grow on this platform, to be seen, and those who do see you, even if it's a tiny audience at the time of you climbing this mountain, like for me over on YouTube, it's like not a big following. And so it's just like, okay, well, day in, day out, I'm still hitting it, right? I still want this to be the platform that I grow on. And so you're going to come up against doubts, overthinking, second guessing, questioning yourself. And you want to know that the bare minimum you're still able to do, given all that, you still feel good about the bare minimum you can give. Because if the onslaught of negativity, or what you feel is negative about an app, and the negative energy that's maybe bringing into your life, like stress, then you're not going to want to keep doing it. And if anything, you just want to be consistent on the bare minimum, at least, right? So the bare minimum for Instagram, let's say for you, would be posting 1 time a week. The bare minimum for me on YouTube is uploading a video once a week. And that I can do, right? So if you feel like I can do that. And it does take, if you're starting to encounter like, oh, there's some bottlenecks for me doing even the bare minimum, simplify even more. What's the even simpler option you can do? So maybe you're not posting every day on social, on Instagram in particular, but you're in stories every day. Whatever it is, essentially, you want to find what the bare minimum is, and then you just continue to grow what that minimum is. And that comes with increased bandwidth, because it's not just you doing it. That comes with, because you hired it out, you hired some aspect of your business out, and gives you more time to do this thing, or they're doing it entirely for you. Social media, don't recommend that. But basically, you feel good about being on this platform, doing the bare minimum to keep your presence alive. And if somebody came to your feed, your page, in 7 weeks, and they're new to you, they heard about you from somebody else, or you came across the Explore page, then you want to feel like the bare minimum is enough to keep them interested, that person, right? And that's a process. That's a process, just even doing that, like doing the bare minimum to know that when you get the eyeballs, even if it's just a couple, when you're starting out, when you get the eyeballs, you're keeping the eyeballs, because you're so niched, you're so specific, you're so strategic with the topics, the angle at which you're coming at it is exclusive to you, right? Is proprietary to your intellectual property, your thoughts. You created this, right? Then it's like, okay, well, I feel confident in that, because that's ultimately branding. That's ultimately what you want to do. And when you are the go-to, somebody is in need that urgently, and comes across your page, it's a no-brainer, because they know exactly what you do and how you help. So all that to hopefully answer your question, what is the right social media platform for my business? And yeah, I think it is, social media brings so much opportunity to the table. I'm noticing that with YouTube, why it's so male dominated is, there are just some fast risers. So people rising to the top really fast, and maybe not saying how they're doing it necessarily, but you can only imagine how many times they're posting a day, a week. And so recognize that you won't grow as fast as they do posting daily if you're only posting 1 time a week. So it's going to be relative, your growth, and therefore your virality. So how viral you get when you do get a good hit on, you tapped in a nerve. You tapped a nerve that your niche audience needed to hear. And then it's just kind of like the algorithm takes note. People take note. They're referring, they're sending, they're sharing, and commenting, engaging. Then, like, okay, yeah, I'm onto something. And yeah, that's why I think with YouTube, why it's so male dominated is, you're with thumbnails, you're competing for eyes. You want all eyes on you based on your title and thumbnail. And so you're constantly testing that stuff. And it feels like you got to test pretty quickly. With a smaller audience, there is no quick because data doesn't move that fast or that fluidly through a small sample size. So like an experiment with a small sample size, the algorithm, it's not worth it for the algorithm to, roll the dice on your channel unless you're consistent, unless you're showing up, unless you're commenting, unless they're recognizing through your behavior that you're committed to this. And that's why, 18 months is the bare minimum for an app to really start to, have that behavior match the audience's behavior. So the viewership's behavior and the content creator's behavior, like merging. It's kind of like when Google was spitting out search results before AI just really dominated the whole search field, the search world. They had to know by your behavior online how long you clicked, if you clicked away onto something on the search results page in Google, how long did you stay on that external site? How long, did you come right back? Did you bounce off of that website after hitting Google, which means Google's going to see that quick bounce back or bounce off the website you were on and say, okay, that was not a good match for that person, that query. And so let's try a different one. And so they're doing that at the speed of light. They're matching query and results at the speed of light. Okay. And the proximity and speed you are to the speed of light and keeping up with them, the faster you'll grow, because you know what they're thinking and you want to give them all the fuel to make the decision that you are the website for them. That's why, there's SEO tools and things like that, like ranking experts and people to help you rank your pages. So, okay, that's what I want to say. Oh, I was going to say, okay, so a lot of YouTubers, while being kind of masculine in their approach, not everybody, and you'll find the gems where, they're still growing and they've grown, but they're very feminine forward. And so absolutely that's there too. Anyway, so YouTube, and then you've got like school. So school community, I talked some weeks ago about school, and school communities is really a rival to Facebook groups. And you start a school community. It's not free for the content creator or the course creator, whatever, coach, however you're using your school community. It's not free for them, but they're hosting this community and to, get people in there to ultimately build a community. But the way that it feels most people are driving is that it's community for the sake of pitching. And I worry about that, because when it comes to like me wanting to join school and get on school, I'm hesitant because it is so masculine. It's so masculine. Like the energy just immediately is just like when you go onto school.com. And I might have been swayed because I know the founders of school, not personally. I know the founders of school. I know of them, and I've seen them in interviews, and so and I receive their energy as different than mine, and so that's just not my vibe. But I understand that it's attracted a certain type of crowd to school, because you really just cannot avoid attracting more of the same. That's why you niche. That's why you go after certain people, certain audiences, and you niche, because you want the conversation to be so targeted, so spot on, that people are like flocking to it. And that is a strong niche position. It's a niche message and a niche audience, right? And a niche platform in a way, because you kind of carve that corner of the internet on this app. And that is kind of the niche aspect of the app, because you can still drive hashtags to it and, what have you. And the algorithm also recognizes the different types of viewers out there. And they like this content. They like slower content. They like content with music. They like educational content. They like funny things only. I only come on Instagram to laugh, things like that. Not that they're not going to get fed otherwise. They're going to get fed anything the algorithm wants to spit out because, again, they're testing and moving at the speed of light, right? So anyway, so just find your groove. If you don't know, if you're not tapped in intuitively to which app you want to start first or start on first, because that's essentially what it's about, starting first, what you can keep up with, because when you start to hire a team and you just kind of partition out aspects of your marketing, then maybe somebody that is more masculine is better suited there and can churn out content a little bit faster. AI tools can do that too. Can kind of be your masculine to your feminine. So anyway, all right. So that is that. And I want to switch to the next question because this one is, I don't know. It's just top of mind. It's definitely coming up on my feed a lot, maybe for you guys too, because I think people are asking themselves the question, or just maybe even self-diagnosing whether they're ADHD. And so Jay Shetty on one of his podcasts, interviews with Dr. Daniel Amen, he asked, how do I know if I have ADHD or if I'm just distracted? Because we're living in an overwhelming time. And yeah, how do you know if you have ADHD or if you're just distracted? If you care for a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis that would help you plug some holes in your thinking and your resolve to work on this as an area, a wound to heal, then see a doctor. Okay. See a specialist, see a psychiatrist, Dr. Daniel Amen is a psychiatrist. Somebody wrote somewhere, I saw online, neuroscientist, but I think that's not true because on his own websites, he's not a neuroscientist. He's just a psychiatrist. And he comes at it from very science driven. He backs it up with science, obviously. And to hear his answer is fascinating to somebody who's not so scientific but is interested in learning where science might have steered the conversation and made it a problem, because made it a problem that needs fixing, a problem that needs medicine, prescription, drugs, things like that. Dr. Amen is not saying, he's a psychiatrist, but he's not saying throw pills at it, ADHD. He's okay. So he's tying in kind of like the awareness around what type of ADHD you have so that you can treat it accordingly. And he does get into the emotional aspect of ADHD, because once behavior becomes a habit, it's already an emotion. There's already a charge and a vibration for that emotion in your body and in your perspective, in your belief system, right? The way in which you see the world. If it's an emotion and it lives in your body and you attach it to a sense, you attach the belief, the definition, the label to that sensation in your body. So fear, for me, I fear heights. And so that's something I really want the power of my mind to help me with. And so I look down on a really tall building and my stomach quivers, and I can feel that. That's a tangible sensation of, I know for most of us, panic and what's the other word? Like emotion sickness, a nausea. And those two, feel the same at the beginning, right? And then it's like, okay, if I'm not motion sick, then I'm just kind of in panic mode. But then sometimes, panic can turn to nausea. Anyway, he's kind of saying, like, he's coming at it from like, understand the type of ADHD and it's not something that necessarily needs medicine unless you need it to kind of help calm the turbulence inside, right? But he said something pretty fascinating. Women are less likely to be diagnosed ADHD because they're not as easily observed as having ADHD, because people think hyperactivity is kind of the telltale sign. And it's not, because sometimes just daydreaming in class and not just kind of zoning out and not even listening to the teacher, but yet you're maintaining eye contact, but you're not in class, which is more of a feminine way of expressing distraction, disinterest, disconnection. It's kind of like just kind of daydreaming, versus kind of a boy who's in class and kind of moving around. His body's kind of ready to, his body shows that he's disinterested, right? He's darting to, and his eyes are darting everywhere. His body's moving, his legs are kicking, he's fidgeting, he's doodling. And so those kind of more telltale signs are why men are more apt, more quick to get diagnosed, to be kind of going down that route. And Jay asks, why the jump in number of ADHD? Actually, maybe this was a different podcast. I don't know that Jay Shetty asked this, but why did the number jump of ADHD? The people diagnosed with ADHD, a couple years ago, let's say it was 9%. This year, it's 35% of the population have ADHD. And I think, one, people are interested in getting the diagnosis. We're more aware that there's tests to test for this stuff. That's why people are finding out their ADHD at 50 years old, and they take the time to find out if they're ADHD. And a lot of wounds are healed because they weren't necessarily, treated with the respect that now DEI for sure, inclusivity, this air of inclusivity, this desire to recognize our differences and be inclusive in our content, and really not be so prejudiced. It's like we've got an invested interest in understanding the mental health aspects that might prevent somebody from being maybe, acting typically. So if they're acting in a way that's atypical, what could it be? So I don't assume or judge or really bully, right? And I think the bully culture kind of brought this about. It's like the bully is dealing with a lot of wounds, and the bullied are dealing with a lot of wounds. And to just let's talk about second graders getting into fights. To just come at the bully as though he's bad, and the bullied as though he needs rescue and saving, it's like, well, then they stay stuck in needing to be rescued and saved. The bully stays stuck in thinking he's bad or she's bad, mean girl syndrome, and the big bad bully on campus, the one who says meet me after school in the parking lot. Is that two 80s and 90s movies? But anyway, yeah, definitely not a lot of, well, that's not true. That's not true. So let me not even say it. Anyway, so it's, we're recognizing that the wounds, we're all dealing with wounds. And this is why I like Gabor Mate, also somebody kind of on the scene right now talking about ADHD, but he has a book on ADHD called Scattered Minds. And I think that was some years ago. And he's fascinating to me because he is tying in the emotion and really saying, like, yeah, you use the drug, not necessarily 7 different types of ADHD. He's coming more at it like 4 different types of emotions, right? That we carry. And if we're emoting, or our emotions are in kind of this aspect, then, we might need, it's usually tied to this kind of a wound. And then how would you heal that wound versus, what medication would you put on it? So Dr. Amen is saying they're saying the same thing. So Gabor Mate he's a physician. So I think he's more like family practice, because he sees people kind of through like a primary doctor would in the US, where You would have a primary, and the primary kind of refers you out. There are other plans that you don't need to get referred out, but ultimately you kind of go back to the primary. The primary is informed on any kind of specialist stuff you do, and so kind of houses this main medical record on you. At least you want that. You want some primary doctor to be housing your medical record. It makes it easier for care, ongoing and hereafter, whatever. So anyway, so it's like it's just that. So I think Gabor Mate is more of that kind of a doctor in Canada. That's what I gather, because he pointed out, like, you've got the specialist doctors, and then you kind of have the general medicine doctors. That's what he is more of. And then Dr. Amen is the specialist doctor, psychiatrist. So mental health, mental field. And which makes me wonder, what is a neuroscientist? Like, how do you get that title? Anyway, because he's a psychiatrist, so he studies the mind, right? He studies the brain. Something Dr. Amen wrote on his site. He says the guiding principle is simple: get your brain right, and your mind will follow. His mission is to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health. So I like that he kind of separated brain from mind, because I don't necessarily understand what he means there. But I think if it's kind of on a spiritual level, then, yay, good. He recognizes the difference of brain and mind. But honestly, I don't know if I didn't read into it all that much. But anyway, what I wanted to do was kind of circle back to, Gabor Mate comes at it from more like an emotional standpoint, like the wound in your childhood. And yes, it's all based on childhood, how you were parented, your upbringing, right? The influences in your life, how you were parented and how you weren't parented, creates kind of this hole that our activity, our behavior starts to plug, right? And if you feel like, so I saw his interview on Mel Robbins' podcast, and the Scattered Minds book is the one on ADHD. I've not read that. I will. His new book is called The Myth of Normal. I'm assuming it has to do with what they were talking about on the podcast, but they were really kind of just on ADHD in the episode that I saw, just on ADHD. So I don't know if The Myth of Normal was his book on that, because he did refer to his book about Scattered Minds being the one on ADHD. And so they kind of reference that. They kept coming back to that. Where I find him fascinating is he's tying ADHD to, it's a learned behavior, and our sensitivity to this kind of hyperactivity, distracted, poor attention, low or short attention span, is kind of tied to what we were exposed to as kids. Were we given the love and the patience and kindness and tenderness from our parents, or were they too stressed to do that, right? And on the scale, you fall into one of those. You got stressed parents over here, and then just the really lax, carefree parent, and then you're somewhere on this this pendulum, this scale of like this. That was my upbringing, right? And that is going to lend itself to how you show up in life. And so there's the autism spectrum disorder, and then some people are saying ADHD. I'm autistic and I have ADHD. Like, people are saying they have both, and that, I believe, requires kind of like a neuropsych eval, like a wide ranging psych eval to kind of test for all that. But I do know that more people are saying they have ADHD and they were diagnosed late, and it makes sense now, right? Everything they went through as a kid, it makes sense. that, oh, I reacted this way, or, oh, had a hard time making friends. Oh, I couldn't focus in class. I had a hard time in this subject. Because ADHD doesn't mean you cannot focus. It just means you focus on what you want to focus on. But who isn't like that? Like who doesn't find it hard to focus on the things you don't want to pay attention to, right? We have selective hearing and selective learning. That's just kind of like, we all do that. We all kind of tune out when it's not interesting, and we focus in on what is interesting to us. And I think it's a little bit of survival of the fittest, because you want to be educated on the thing that you are most interested in, right? You naturally have an inclination to go down the rabbit hole on. And I think that when we're talking, primary, elementary school, we can't siphon off information. We're trying to give all the kids all of the information. And then you start to get into college, high school, and then you can start to take these like more categorically interesting classes, right? They're called electives, right? But you still get your general ed. And that's because, you want to be well-rounded. You want people to have like some level of a well-rounded approach to knowledge, which is great, right? And then that's where extracurriculars come in. You want to do something else, learn music, learn a sport, then, that's in addition to school. I also heard that in California, the times have changed with school. And at some point, it became illegal to start school before 8 a.m. because it was cutting into the kids' sleep, and kids need sleep. And I remember, I think, when I was in high school, I think we started at 7:45 or something. And that was rough. But so, now it's like no earlier than 8 a.m. here in America, or here in California. I don't know how widespread that is, but it's kind of like all these mental health initiatives, to systemically change the structure of school and education, I think ultimately is born, right? The people who petition for this stuff, it's kind of like it's born from a good place. And then the lobbyists take it, the politicians take it, turns greedy. Then it's all about money, the money grab, and like the bills, to gain fame and prominence in legislation or whatever government. Then it's just like, who knows what happens then. But I can, I respect the 8 a.m. start for the sake of sleep, right? Getting more sleep, because ADHD is fueled by lack of sleep. So Dr. Amen talked about so before you go to drugs, what about diet, right? Like, look at your diet, cut out corn syrup and sugar and gluten and dairy, corn, cut those out. See if your ADHD doesn't improve, your ability to focus on more than just what you're interested in, because you want an A in this class, whatever, just need to graduate. But ultimately, he's saying that, and I like that, because there is like this holistic way of approaching anything. Not just mental health, is whole body health. And the sectors of the internet who are not looking at it like that are doing the listeners a disservice, right? They're not sharing the whole story. And then Gabor Mate is coming at it still from science. Like, he's got a lot of science to back up his train of thought. And then so does the Source author. I forget her name, the author of The Source. She is, I don't know where she's from actually, but she writes about kind of this scientific approach to mental health in so many words. Look the book up. I haven't read it yet. Anyway, it's like, science is at the forefront. It always will be, because there's a lot of money there, and it's important because it drives our medicine. And we do need medicine. Neither of those doctors said, no to medicine. Use it when you need it, but don't live off of it, because there are other things to adjust in your life that will help your whole body health. And emotionally speaking, the wounds that we have as kids turn into problems for us as adults. And the alienation, the fear, the insecurity, the abuse, the trauma that we experience as kids, whatever it is, turn into, problems for us as adults, because then we've got to navigate that. And because it shows up, right, in how we relate to other people, how we form marriages, how we form careers, how we form friendships, right? And it starts to get more noticeable, the discrepancy. As adults, though, it's easier to find your people, right? As a kid, it's just like you're going to the same school, you're around the same 20 kids, and you really have got no outlet, and you're testing so many things, so many boundaries, so many personalities, and belief systems across kind of just these, these kids you're being raised around. And that, this one teacher for a full year, and then the next teacher for a full year, and then your parents all through it all, right? So that's kind of the through line, that you're going to school, you're coming home, and you've got your family to continue to test these boundaries against, or to feel loved. If I have struggled in school today, I come home and I still feel loved, right? In spite of it all, I still have a place of safety. And if this place of safety is not there, if it's compromised for any of the reasons I said before, then, we've got these childhood wounds. And then that shows up as, different behavior. And so ADHD, right, is one of those behaviors. And I will share, so Dr. Amen has 7 types of ADHD. He says classic ADHD, characterized by hyperactivity, impulsivity, and inattentiveness. Inattentive ADHD primarily manifests with inattentiveness and disorganization without significant hyperactivity. Overfocused ADHD, individuals who are excessively focused and may have difficulty shifting attention, leading to anxiety and perfectionism. I mean, overfocused, that could be OCD, right? And then you've got different types of OCD. Temporal lobe ADHD, associated with memory problems, mood swings, and learning difficulties. Limbic ADHD, characterized by emotional instability, anxiety, and depression. So here where he is tapping into kind of the emotional wound that could result in limbic ADHD. Ring of fire ADHD, so anger, irritability, sensitivity to stimuli. This ring of fire ADHD he mentioned is a lot of times you'll see that irritability, the impatience with regards to change, not having control. That is sometimes a product of, because he's done tests, so he's got percentages of people that have showed these trends, right? And so the ring of fire, anger, like when ADHD feels like it's manifesting in the child as anger and irritability and impatience and wanting to control everything. And if I don't get my way, I'm mad. He says he draws a correlation between alcoholic parents and their kids. And so ring of fire ADHD could come from where that is. I mean, okay, are we saying it's hereditary? Or are we saying it's kind of like nature versus nurture? Or are we saying it's hereditary? Yes, Dr. Amen says it's hereditary. I don't know that the ring of fire is hereditary for the ring of fire if he's saying alcoholism of the parent affects the kid as being more likely to have the ring of fire version of ADHD, the irritability, impatience, that kind of thing, the needing to control everything. I need to get my way. Because if you think about it, that's more nature, right? But then recognize that doesn't mean that alcoholic parent wasn't abused in some way, by their alcoholic parent. Maybe they had an alcoholic parent, or somebody who had some form of substance abuse, or was absent, an absent parent, right? So, I mean, the lineage to which this stuff kind of meta morphs into what you've got today. I've got young boys, so I am especially interested in all this stuff. Healing generational trauma, right? And the generational trauma is coming from the mom and the dad. So it's like, is it hereditary? Gabor Mate says it's not hereditary in that sense. What is hereditary is sensitivity, the sensitivity to the stimuli, maybe. So if it's like Jay Shetty said, this overwhelming time, yeah, social media is overwhelming. The news is overwhelming. It's coming at us from all angles, every single broadcast channel, radio, internet, cable, YouTube. It's like everywhere. So yeah, it's a lot. And let me finish out his 7th ADHD, anxious ADHD. And that is high levels of anxiety, worry, and avoidance behaviors. That could be on another person's evaluation as an anxiety disorder, not necessarily spit out ADHD, anxiety, ADHD. And so I guess where I kind of am left with the ADHD topic is, my theory is, and I guess I'm at the start of this type of research. Will I study this in medical school? No. That's not what I need to inform what I believe about the situation. I believe it's, I think science is trying to keep up with behavior, and because behavior doesn't lie. Beliefs can lie. And sometimes behavior is tired of getting the lie put on it, and will reject the label or the belief in so many ways, and want you to think differently and kind of strive for thinking differently until it's exhausted and there's disease and cancer. And so is my belief more to the aspect of like understanding the mind's role in all of this? Absolutely. And so am I attracted to the big thinkers in regards to mental health? Yes, because I want, and the doctors in regards to medical health? Absolutely. Because I want to understand their vantage point too. And they do always tie in some aspect of spirituality, even though they label it science, to justify, their findings. And, and they also say, don't they say like, there's no such thing as an unbiased science experiment? Like the experimenter, the scientist comes with their own bias, that's why they're asking the question in the first place. One, they're aware of the problem, the discrepancy, the polarity of a situation, and they're testing kind of the fork in the road. Okay, what is this telling me? I could go one of two ways. I believe it's going to go that way. And so let's test it out. And who knows, in these boardrooms of those scientific offices, those labs, are they discussing the lead scientist's opinion on the matter, right? And will you push the experiments to favor one side or the other? Who knows? Do we know? Are we even aware of when we do that, when we kind of manipulate the results to see what we want to see? I think so. I think we do. We tend to, and not always because we know what we're doing. Anyway, so that was like this way roundabout question of looking at Jay Shetty's question to Dr. Daniel Amen. How do I know if I have ADHD or if I'm just distracted because we're living in an overwhelming time? And I believe ultimately the distractions, right? We are here to filter out the distractions. What would distract us from kind of being our full selves, expressing ourselves wholly and fully and honestly and authentically? without shame, without insecurity, without thinking we're less than, without thinking that we need to be anything other than who we are in order to please other people. And I think we're always toggling it, we're always playing in that field, kind of this people pleasing. I'm adjusting how I show up based on if I can please this particular part of the world that I want to fit into. Can I please the people of the group I would like to be part of? And I think that also ties into the social media platform question from earlier, because you do kind of you get to pioneer and carve out your own space within something like a masculine app. YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, those are more masculine in nature. And so it's kind of like the wrong platform is a distraction, because then you're working on the wrong thing for where you want to go. So then it ties back to, what do you see for yourself? How do you want to live? How do you want to feel long term and in the interim? It's like, feel it now. Go the route of feeling it now. If you don't feel it now, and you're feeling disconnected from the feeling you ultimately want to feel in the vision of you and your life in 10 years, then you won't get there. You're going to be off. But 1% change week after week, right? In your consistency scale for you is the bare minimum posting once a week to this platform. Okay, well, 1% better. Consistency in itself is getting 1% better. Just you showing up, you're coming to the algorithm as 1% more knowledgeable than the person who didn't start yesterday. And so you are by default getting 1% better just showing up every single week. If that's the bare minimum, get 1% better at that. Get 1% better at making sure you're not compromising on what feels good for you in this moment. Being honest and true to your niche audience, to your niche topic, to what you want to be known for. Get 1% more directional in your output so that it aligns with the vision that you have for yourself. And yeah, I don't know. It all ties in, because, social media gets a bad rap for causing a lot of the anxiety, the depression, and the behavior in our kids today, our teens, right? And when it really gets real, puberty hits, and the social aspect of life is now in person and online. And not to say that wasn't years ago, because it always was there, whatever was, the technology allowing for the social aspect of life to perpetuate. It's always been there for us right now, social media. And there's going to be something else in 10 years. It's going to be called something else. And yeah, so, social media has been around for years and years and years, decades. But yeah, I think why I'm tying those two together is because it's kind of like, staying true to yourself, checking in with yourself, making sure you're not compromising on aspects of who you are. That's the constant work we're doing every day, all day. And the more tapped into recognizing that ultimately is the struggle, and the more we educate our kids on ultimately that being the struggle, and you feeling good about who you are, and how can you flip the narrative from, I feel like I've got no friends in school, I feel bullied in school, I don't feel like I fit in with my friend group, or I'm having a fight with my friend group, or whatever the situation, or I broke up with my boyfriend, or I have a crush that doesn't give me the time of day. It's like all of these scenarios are playing out in high school, and junior high, and they're coming home to their parents, these kids, and whether they have ADHD or not, they still need to be able to communicate with their safe place, their safe people, their tribe, and in saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. And, what do I do? I don't feel good about myself. And I'm scared that this is affecting, my ability to belong. And so what would you say to that as a parent? What would you say to that kid who needs you to remind them of who they are? And not point the blame at the person at the school, even the bully, but first ground down into what do you think of that? What do you believe about yourself? Do you believe what they said about you? I read a book called Bringing Up Boys Who Love Themselves, and she said she likes the giraffes analogy, where it's like, if those kids called you a giraffe, are you a giraffe? Well, no, I'm not. Okay, well, let's remember that that what they say isn't everything, doesn't go. What they say doesn't go unless you give into it, right? Unless you start to believe it, unless you let it become you. And those are they sound like heavy topics, but I think our kids, as fresh from the womb as they can be, to hear what you're saying to them. And it starts with just, I love you. It starts with, you are smart, you're important. Wow, look how kind you were to that person. And look what happened to their face, and I know us even saying be kind is now kind of there's this questioning of boundaries, right? What does kind look like? What is being nice? Being nice, that's the going phrase, be nice. What does that look like? And then how does that affect boundaries later? Because if I'm being nice today, and it's giving a hug, then am I going to hug when it's like, no, so-and-so doesn't like hugs? Well, okay, now there's boundaries, because I was taught that being nice is giving hugs or touching in some way. And then now there's boundaries at school, and I can't touch, I can't hug, this person doesn't like it. Okay, well then what do we still know about ourselves? What do you know about yourself, right? Well, you are a hugger, but not everybody else is, right? Why do you love to hug? It's like this inquiry into them, helping them discover who they are, because that build self-esteem. That is the foundation of self-esteem. Obviously, the words that we speak to our kids become their soundtrack, and therefore their self-talk. And if we don't give them the words that play in their soundtrack to combat some of the things that they're going to come up against, there's nothing there for them to counter it with what they hear, right? So then they're taking in what somebody else said about them with no reserve, like with no, I don't know, something else to counter what that is. Like, no, I know I'm a good person. You're saying I'm not, but I know I'm a good person. So this, I don't believe you, right? Anyway, okay, so that's a lot, and we're over our time. Thanks for coming on live. We can continue this if you have more questions. I'm always down for anything mental health, that conversation. And I think I left some things, maybe I didn't close loops well enough on this, because there's just so much to say. But anyway, thanks for joining me. Submit your question for next week at clarityhotline.com. I've got a challenge coming up on September 22nd for anybody interested in finding their purpose. And in our case, right, ridding the distractions that keep us from living on purpose. And all of this actually ties into, it's like, do you make ADHD who you are, or do you recognize where the wound is and you start to look at that, right? And how your body reacts to the diet, the words, the community, the conversation that you're in and around, what's being imposed on you, and how your body reacts to that, how it feels, and then what your brain and body and your mind say about what it means. And ultimately, yeah, I mean, finding your purpose is going to help you with your self-esteem and your self-confidence, because when you know your purpose, you're unstoppable. When you know your purpose, when you have clarity on your purpose, you're unstoppable. And you tap in every single day to that purpose, you touch base with who you are and why you're here on a daily basis, you're unstoppable. And so these kinds of, obstacles will not throw you off your course so easily when you feel unstoppable. Anyway, that's it for now. Okay, join me next Thursday, 12 noon. Even if I am not in this seat, I will try to be live at 12 noon Pacific next week. I'm moving around next week and won't necessarily be right here in this room at that time next week. So just know I will try to pop on live. And if it works that I need to do it sooner or earlier in the day or later in the day, I plan to be on live next week. All right. Okay. Peace. Thanks for coming on. I'll close out YouTube now. Thanks for coming on. And